name is Albert Bandura. I was born in 1925, which would make me about 91. I studied at the University of British Columbia in Canada. I'm a Canadian, but I also spent some time in Iowa at the University of Iowa. It's good to be back in God's country. I'm here to tell you a little bit about social cognitive theory, which basically states that children learn by observing the actions of others and their results, versus the belief held by the behaviorists, which says that learning occurs through one's direct actions and their results. As I said back in 1977, learning would be exceedingly laborious, not to mention hazardous, if people had to rely solely on the effects of their own actions to inform what they do. Fortunately, most human behavior is learned observationally through modeling from observing others. One forms an idea of how new behaviors are performed, and on later occasions, this coded information serves as a guide for action.
We just heard how behavior is learned through observation. Next, we'll see a live rendition of the infamous 1961 Bobo doll experiment conducted by Bandura and his colleagues. I will be playing the role of Researcher 1, an adult who demonstrates aggressive behavior toward the Bobo doll.
This is Bobo.
So what you're watching is a live model of observation and learning through observation. So the child saw the researcher act aggressively towards the Bobo doll, and she is now interpreting her own way of behaving or acting with the Bobo doll and hitting it. So in the experiment that Bandura did back in 1961, there was 24 children that were watched a model with aggressive behavior towards the Bobo doll, similar to how we saw our researcher 1 hit and kick the Bobo doll. And then there's 24 in a separate group that were exposed to non-aggressive behavior towards the Bobo doll, and then the children played with Bobo doll. And then there was 24 in a control group where they were just kind of led into a room where Bobo doll was in there, and they watched what the child did to the Bobo doll. And the results showed that the children in the first group, so the children who saw the model act aggressively towards the Bobo doll, showed significantly more instances of aggressive behavior towards the Bobo doll. And each of the children had their own interpretation of ways that they interacted with the Bobo doll. Some of them mirrored the researcher pretty closely, and a lot of them had their own ways of interacting with Bobo doll. Unfreeze.
Unfortunately, I put my hand over the microphone, so we can't actually hear Shannon describe the steps she took in order to make the goal, but we do see that she throws her hands up after she makes the goal.
So what you just saw was an example of verbal instruction. I was over here drawing by myself, but I overheard my friends talking about playing soccer. And Shannon said that when she kicked the ball into the goal, everybody cheered, and that was like really exciting for her. Whereas Michelle explained like these kind of ways of playing soccer haven't worked in the past. And so by listening, I knew that I was supposed to play soccer by kicking the ball into the goal, and then everybody would cheer. So I tried it.
And she decided to pick up on my cues instead of what Michelle's behavior she was talking about, because it was more motivating to get the cheer as opposed to getting yelled at.
This is a really good example of why learning can occur great through observation, and it doesn't have to be direct. You can listen to other people explaining a concept, and then based on positive or negative reinforcement, you learn a new idea.
Next, you're going to see symbolic modeling.
You see it. You see it.
100% vegetable with 3 of your daily vegetable servings in every
Shannon, what are you drinking?
Oh, I'm drinking a coffee. I'm just so tired today. I just like the sugar and everything in it.
Got it out of V8. traumatic learning experience because I saw the V8 commercial on TV. Shannon and I were both watching that, and the mom got bopped in the head because she could have had a V8. Well, I thought that looked really funny when I saw it, and so I wanted to imitate that behavior after it was learned. And so Shannon said she was really tired and she got bopped because she could have had a V8.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to note that it doesn't always have to happen right after, right? So she saw the commercial and she did the behavior right away, but that's not how it always works. So she's a little girl. She did it next week to her siblings, like her older brother or something. That could have occurred because she watched that commercial a week before, a month before. You think about the process, or you think about the behavior you saw, and then you decide if you're gonna, if and when you're going to use that behavior in your life.
So there are 4 components to successful modeling in order to learn, and I'm going to use the example of a child on a playground learning a new skill. So the first step is attention. A child might arrive on the playground and see 5 different activities going on, but in order to learn something, they have to be able to attend to the activities such as hopscotch, or drawing with chalk, or playing kickball. They have to be able to focus in on what they're going to observe. The second step is retention. So the child must have the cognitive abilities and skills to take in the information, make sense of it, and save it for later so that they can imitate right away or later on. The third step is motoric reproduction process. So this means that in order to learn, the child must be able to reproduce these actions. For example, a 4-year-old won't be able to pick up a basketball and shoot it into the hoop right away. The basketball may be too heavy, they don't have the right flexibility, muscle strength, different kinds of motor skills in order to perform the learned skill. And the fourth step is reinforcement and motivation process. So this means that the child must be interested or motivated to learn the act. For example, a child who is more interested in sports would choose to go play kickball and learn that skill, or a child who's more into arts and coloring things would go join the kids who are coloring with chalk. So it's not just a monkey see, monkey do automatic process. There is some autonomous thinking and motivation involved in this observational learning. Also, reinforcement plays a big part of learning. So if the child sees a teacher come over and say, wow, what a pretty drawing you made, they'll see, oh, they got rewarded for that behavior. Or if a child sees the playground monitor yelling at some students whose ball ran into the road after playing a sport, they might be less likely to join the game. And that's an example of how these 4 components of successful modeling are important to observational learning.
So we're just going to give you a quick summary and a few more key points about this theory. So Michelle, do you want to explain nature versus nurture?
Sure. So pretty much any psychological theory needs to address where they stand on nature versus nurture. So the way Albert Bandura and social cognitive theorists would explain this is it's a combination, just like anyone else would say. However, it focuses more on the nurture side. This is because the whole basis is observed learned behavior. So it's not that you're born a certain way or you're born to do these behaviors innately, but you learn them through observing others and watching what they do.
And there's still that nature component, like in his original study, the boys were a little more aggressive than the girls, so they were innately and intrinsically developed so that they were more aggressive. And the process, your self-efficacy and other, like your motor abilities, that would all be the nature side of it as well, that is going to affect how much you learn and how well you're able to repeat those behaviors.
Exactly. But I would say it's not really an age-dependent theory. There aren't any stages like other theories, but the only difference would be that as you age, the social behaviors that you're observing obviously change.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like what you're observing when you're a 13-year-old is going to be completely different than what you observe as a 2-year-old or a 25-year-old. So the way you learn is going to change just a little bit. And you also develop as a person as you age. You kind of fine-tune your interests a little more, which is going to affect your motivation to learn new skills. Not everyone's going to be motivated to do the same things when they're 25.
And then self-efficacy is definitely a big part of it. Bandura focused on that self-efficacy is going to affect the whole process on what you choose to attend to, And most importantly, if you have a really low self-efficacy about a certain behavior, you're not going to get past that retention stage. So you're going to only get through attention and retention. But if you don't think that you're going to be able to do it, you're not going to attempt the motoric reproduction, and then you're never going to learn that behavior.
What would be an example of that?
Yeah, I don't feel that I would be able to do parkour. So I might watch and observe someone do it and even retain some knowledge of like, oh, they did this flip and then did that, but I would never try it because I think I would die. And so I don't think I have that motor ability. However, I might try to learn a new dance step because I'm like, okay, that's within my capabilities.
Great.
And that's Bandura's social cognitive learning.
Thanks,
Any
guys.
questions?
Bye.